But I need a cue from him.
Matt?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, we got
And with the sound of the gavel, we start our Charter Commission meeting of April 12th. And this is an exciting night. I'll tell you, I've been hyper all day. I just can't wait to go through this material because, folks, you know, we've been working at this ever since November at a pretty regular pace. And so this starts one of the milestones along the way. And I have already warned people that I'm going to ask you to expect the unexpected. And the unexpected is that I am canning the first input from the public members. We have tried really hard to have them first or second every single meeting. But tonight, because of the nature of the meeting, and you'll find out in just a minute, we're going to start through materials. And it would be too bad for someone to get up and do input about things that are going to be dealt with later on. So efficiency says, have the input as it is on your agenda during the public hearing time. And so, with that, and I hate that expression, and after, and no further ado. Ado sounds like you were just, you know, playing cards or tiddlywinks.
Or Wordle.
Well, I don't do Wordle.
It was a hard one.
I have no idea what it is.
I do 7 words, and I try not to
We can
cheat.
talk about it later.
So, without further ado, oh, no, I didn't say that. I take it back. Without further conversation, let me reintroduce you to our attorney, Dr. Doctor, hey, I just gave you a new title.
Can you do approval of the
Minutes.
item number 3 first?
I'm going to do the minutes, and when he gets through, so the people who are doing input can gather their thoughts. Okay? I got it all.
Moving things around.
Right, yeah, no, I spent hours on this, you know, rearranging the agenda. And so, and Jim, you've
Yes.
been here before.
Yep.
You know our shortcomings
You
and
need
our
no
shortcomings, and we had a wonderful session last time, and I know that you have worked for hours, and you've had lots of communications back and forth with folks, everything from edits to real votes and all of that. So, we're going to turn it over to you. And Mr. Schweiker, you have your copy, so you can follow along. Do you need a pencil or pen? Okay, you're all set. And so are we. So, you're
All
on.
right, sure. So we're picking up where we left off a week ago. It seems like that was a long time ago. What we have here today, as promised, is really the final version of the preliminary report, which we hope is the copy that we will sign and execute and approve tonight. And I was just going to go through it with you, just to show you what the changes are that we implemented since the meeting last week. And I'm not going to go over you forgot to put the word a here, the word the there. There still may be some of that stuff, but for the most part, this is as clean and perfect as we're going to get it, and definitely as it needs to be for right now. So, without any preliminary questions, all right, so we're going to just go through it page by page, starting with the executive summary and recommendations. Summary, that page hasn't really changed much at the top, except that I did note that you have had 13 meetings between November 15th and April
Right.
12th.
Question?
Could you reiterate what you said last time, which is that the exact language of the ballot questions is not in this?
Yes.
For the people watching?
Yes.
Because I think it was unclear.
For the audience at home enjoying this broadcast,
Actually, they'll listen to it later, but go ahead.
this is a preliminary report of the recommendations of the commission, and it's the first step in the process. Really, it's a 3-part process of getting the questions onto the ballot in November. So first, there's a preliminary report. It's approved. It's submitted to the state. And once it's submitted to the state, then there's a final report. That final report is then, once that's approved, this committee determines what the ballot questions are going to be. The ballot questions get put on a ballot. those ballot questions get put in front of the voters in November. So it's a multi-step process. So for right now, we're not deciding, and you don't need to decide, and it's really a little premature to start talking about how you're going to write up those ballots. Right now, we're just deciding what we want to do with the charter and what amendments we want to put into the charter. So we talked about that last week. And so you will not find ballot questions in here. That I think it's just premature to do that. So the big changes on page 1, if you turn to the executive summary, you'll note that the first amendment that we are recommending is to adopt a resolution regulating campaign contributions. That reflects feedback that we received from the community to really make that a sort of upfront a priority for the commission. The second is then to eliminate obsolete references, which is sort of the no-brainer. And then the third is the clarification about what happens when someone moves out of a school voting zone into another school voting zone. And we spent some time trying to really put some explicit language, at least, so now you're going to see explicit language about when the new person who is elected, when their term starts. To the extent there was confusion or question about that, we have gone to great lengths to just sort of spell it out in like a couple different ways. So this it's here. So we actually just said it here, and then we said it in the amendments, and then we amended it in the document, and I'll show you all 3 places. But that last sentence now says, and to allow any school board member who is elected from one school voting zone but moves to another school voting zone, but not out of the district, to remain in office after they move out of the school voting zone until their replacement is elected and takes office at the beginning of the unexpired term in January. I see that there's a "the" there, but that's okay. So we literally put until their replacement is elected and takes office at the beginning of the unexpired term in January, just to completely spell that out, okay? Fourth Amendment is the stipend amount. Fifth Amendment is the appointment of the treasurer and clerk. And the Sixth Amendment is the local rules about amendment and revisions. None of those have changed. Okay? So if you turn to page 3, we note at the beginning there's 4 appendices now instead of 3, and we'll talk about that when we get there. Really, none of this has changed until you get to section C on page 4. We spent some time after the last meeting going through the proceedings language, and mostly the second and third paragraph describing that the Charter Commission minutes were posted, that it was broadcast live, and here we are right now on Concord, New Hampshire TV, and that those meeting minutes are available online, that the minutes are posted on the website. We also put in there that the commission will maintain a notebook, and I understand that Lyndon and folks are working on putting that notebook together with tons of documents and things of great interest and intrigue for the future.
That's why I was really careful when I answered people. I was afraid that they would become public. And as they say, don't put anything in an email that you don't want on the front page of the Monitor.
Sure. And then the second paragraph is about, the very openness of the meeting and the public testimony, and who presented, including former and current board members, employees, members of the public, the clerk, and overall, on 24 separate occasions, citizens appeared before the commission and offered public testimony. As you know, a few folks more than once, and that you were greatly appreciative of that participation. Next paragraph, we have a reference to Appendix B, and that appendix is the appendix that you asked to include in the report, and that is an appendix of all action, motions made during the meeting, so it's action items, and that's included in your packet, okay? Does that confuse anybody? All right. Turning to, now this is really, nothing here is new. It walks you through the process. The process hasn't changed, but now we're on page 6, where we're going back through the recommendation and the explanation language, where you'll see that the campaign reporting amendment is now first again. Obsolete language is now 2, and the amendment to clarify residency and domicile requirements is now 3. Again, at the bottom of the explanation in 3, that last sentence, the amendment would further clarify that if a school board member moves out of a school voting zone to another school voting zone, that member would continue to serve until a new person from the original school voting zone is elected for the remainder of the unexpired term, and that the newly elected person takes office at the beginning of the unexpired term in January. Literally, like, a little bit of redundancy, but it really makes the point. So even if there's a question about, well, what does the language in the charter mean? This is good documentation about what our intent was, if that ever comes up.
I've had a couple of arguments with people, and I'm glad that it's as clear as it is, and I don't care if it is repetitious. Repetition brings emphasis.
Okay, thank you. I agree. It's good. It's not like too much repetition. It just makes the point really clear. Okay, number 5. Number 4 hasn't changed. Board compensation. And just to be clear, one of the members of the commission asked that it's just a requirement that the board set the commission. It doesn't mean they are required to increase the commission every year. That's always going to be up to the school board if this is approved. Number 5. The only change here is at the very end. This was something that Eric brought up. I thought it was a good little addition. The amendment would authorize the school board to appoint the school district clerk and school district treasurer consistent with the school district's historic practice prior to 2011. Just to kind of add that little piece of information.
Good idea.
Amendment 6 is, again, it's the same language. I just reworded the middle sentence in the last sentence so that it would flow a little bit better. The last language said retain language, and since some of the language is a little bit tweaked, I thought saying that we were retaining language wasn't quite accurate, so I just modified that to say this amendment would update the charter's local amendment and revision rules by referring to the current state statutes while retaining the higher thresholds for certain actions. So these are the ones that we retained, such as a 3/5 majority vote to approve any changes to the charter, as well as a higher threshold for voters to petition for a charter amendment or to establish a charter commission. It's a lot of stuff in that sentence, but it flows, it makes sense. This amendment would also require a vote of at least 7 members of the school board to present a charter amendment directly to the voters, and a vote of at least 6 members of the school board to establish a charter commission. Okay, so.
On the following state statutes for setting our own thresholds, where are those laid out? The number of citizens and the percent of vote.
Where are they actually spelled out?
Yeah,
we're going to get to that, but that's actually in the charter in the red line document.
No, I know I read it, but I just said, so it's later on.
So this is, the explanation is just like trying to put what the amendment does in sort of plain language.
Oh, that's most appreciated.
But it's still hard to explain it in plain language, even though we did our best to make it clear. It's still like, okay. Signature page. It's in alphabetical order. Everybody's name is spelled right.
Well,
Oh, good.
we got it.
Which is important. Appendices, current charter, summary of matters, so we'll get to Part B, but that's basically your motions. The proposed charter, marked to show changes, and then the clean version is Part D. Okay? So if we turn to Appendix A, these are not attached any longer, so if you take your binder clip apart, you can separate it more easily.
Yeah.
This is your current charter, so I'm going to really move to Appendix B. And Bill, do you want to just explain this, because this is sort of your historic record that you folks put together.
This is just in response to our discussion last week, which said maybe we should include in the preliminary report a statement of the matters that we considered, even if we didn't move ahead with them to a formal amendment proposal. And so what we did is take the excellent chart that I think Lyndon did the lead work on, and just put it in an appendix form, and it shows all of those motions that we went through and voted on. And those are matters that if anyone's interested in the future, they can say, oh, they did consider that during that charter commission. And they can look further for further information if they go into the minutes and the CCTV record.
I think there are some people in the community who may have offered some of these topics that came out as motions upon which we would take a vote. And if they have an interest, they could see, for example, there was one about changing the school board calendar in the summertime. And that motion failed. And a lot of it, I think, came upon the fact that no one else had mentioned this and there had not been any lack of quorum to make this necessary. So I think that this serves a lot of purposes. First of all, 22 items, then we weren't sitting around twiddling our thumbs. There were a lot of suggestions. And as I said before, they came out half and half passed, half failed to go on to further discussion. And then this absolute record of how people voted on the different motions is ideal. And I don't know whose idea it was last time, but it was brilliant, and I thank you.
Other questions? The wording of the questions, are they how we actually made the motions during the meeting? Because like on number 7, it says motion to recommend further work on charter amendment that would establish rules in the charter relating to establish a tax increment financing districts. And it says failed 7-1. Okay, I'm sorry, okay, so I see the X's or the no's. Got
Yeah.
it, so got it, okay.
know what?
Just confused.
The key is on the first
Yep.
page, but you have to remember.
I was getting
what they mean.
confused there, okay, checks versus.
This is
Excellent.
what motions passed look
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And
No, I have my
yeah.
tally sheet still. I'm surprised you didn't want to use it.
And that was an interesting and exciting night. We felt like we had a good organizational format on which to vote.
Yeah.
And we gleefully voted. And then it's been put together in a format that helped us organize our work from that point on. So as I say, whoever suggested it, thank you very much, because I do think it has value and adds to the whole preliminary report, because it adds information that might not have otherwise been included.
Yeah, you don't have to go through the minutes to see the work, and that's helpful.
Oh, thank you. Because I thought we were just workaholics.
I think you are. All right, so Appendix C, this is the red line version of the charter that we are fond and familiar with at this point. It's nothing really is changed in here until you get to 5. Drum roll, please.
Okay, yes, just a
Yeah,
minute.
so- Bill and I have talked through and rewritten and wordsmithed this so much, but basically,
Excuse me, are we on page 5 or?
we're on,
5 or-
yeah, so you're on Appendix C, page 3.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, good question, thank you
said
for,
5, so I went to 5.
it's section 5.
Got it.
I got you. Thank you.
It's section 5, this is the, starting in the middle of that paragraph with the line whenever. Here is hopefully the final version of this. Yeah, there's plenty of copies right here. Final version. So whenever a district or school voting zone board member ceases to maintain a domicile in the district or otherwise vacates such office. Okay, that's a new phrase. So that's just to make sure it's clear that it's any cause for a vacancy or resignation, whatever. Other morbid reasons. The board shall declare the office of such person vacant and shall appoint a qualified person to serve for the remainder of the calendar year, when the voters of the district or the school voting zone shall elect a replacement to serve for the balance of the unexpired term beginning in January. So we just, instead of leaving it sort of general, we became very specific and talked about calendar year and January and all these things that we can do because we know that the elections are in November and the terms start in January.
And I'd like to add too that there's a consistency here. There are many ways for a seat to be forfeited or become vacant. A person can resign. I don't think we've ever had anybody die in office. There are people who move out of state, out of the district, capital D, and then they're in business of moving out of the zone. So there is a consistency here that it's, well, do we do this or do we do that? No, you always do this. And so I personally am very happy with that, because I've had a couple of major arguments with pretty important people, and I won't tell you what side I was on. No, I was on the winning side.
The winning side.
Yes, I was. Well, logic, and so we're not going to point fingers at, how someone had a different opinion, but now it's absolutely clear. And we thank both of you for reflecting that. And if anybody here is still unclear, ask a question now.
That's just to point out that that same phrasing is used right below. It's that same exact phrase.
So I just have a very quick question about that last 3 words, beginning in January. And I think we talked about that before, and I don't want to...
Well, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about the moving van driving away from the driveway. We talked about January, when the first meeting is held, and people take their oath and start their office. I mean, there were lots of different things in there between the ratification of the vote in November and January, and we needed to make it absolutely clear. And it seems that Jim and Bill have found the words to do that. Are you satisfied with those, or are you just checking?
Well,
That
I'll tell you if I'm satisfied after I check,
okay.
I think. I'm trying to picture it in my head how this actually would work in real life. So, just picking up, when the voters of the district or the school voting zone shall elect a replacement to serve for the balance of the unexpired term, beginning in January. So in real life, they elect the school board president can pick someone to choose, for the interim.
No,
That's
we let them stay in the
that's
seat.
not the out of the zone thing.
We let
So
them
if
stay.
you move in February, you get to stay on the board, and you can either choose to run in your new zone or resign, and a new person runs
Right.
in your place, and you
November.
stay till January.
But the language in the preliminary report, to me, is clearer than this language. It's not exactly the same.
So why does it say
Did you
shall
want it to be?
appoint a qualified person to serve?
That's if someone moves out of Concord or dies or resigns.
Right.
That's different from someone who's voted
Yeah.
voting zone.
That part makes great sense to me. I
Okay.
totally get that. I didn't think that these words addressed that particular issue, but I must not have read it carefully.
Yeah, so the thing is, all of the words and all of the phrasing in here, it all has like multiple meanings. Because in the purest form, what the language in the statute says, shall elect a replacement at the next election for the unexpired term. That's all the statutes really say. So it really, that actually defines that you're going to elect a person to fill in, that they're going to fill in for the unexpired term. So that'll be the length of how long they're going to be in office for. And it also tells you when they take office because of the phrase for the unexpired term. But we all decided that we weren't going to just rely on a few words. We were going to try to expand it and try to really explain it in more depth, because we wanted to leave nothing open to interpretation or argument. The reason we explained it differently, not differently, we explained it using different words in the summary and in the preliminary report explanation, is so that there were many different ways of saying the same thing, and then finally this is technically what it says. I mean, it's really just trying to put it in layman's term, but this is it. So it says here that when someone vacates an office, you have to appoint a qualified person to take that position. They're only taking that position for the remainder of that calendar year.
Until there's an election.
And then there's an election in November, So what the weird thing is that someone new gets elected and someone appointed stays in office until, for, the rest of November, the rest of December, and then the new term starts for that newly elected person, and that new term's only gonna be 1 or 2 years. Can't be longer than that.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I just wanted to
Yeah, finish your-
finalize mine. So now I'm satisfied with it.
Okay, yeah, well, the thing, and I'll say it again, is that it means if a person resigns, there's a process. If a person dies in office, there's a process. If a person moves out of the zone, there's a process. If the person moves out of the district, there's a process. And they all get replaced one way or another, either by election or appointment from the school board. And then they take their new office, and their new office could only be 2 years at maximum, because there are 3-year terms and they've already done one. So they would take office for 1 or 2 years. You all set on that?
I am.
It's a little awkward, but at least it's clear. I mean, awkward in that you would have an already elected person and you'd have a lame duck. But only the lame duck is going to the meetings. And that might satisfy the idea that you're not booting out or making someone forfeit something and lose their seniority and their experience and all of that. Because at the same time, they can run from their new domicile.
Right.
And be in office and run again, well, which somebody could for a re-election anyway. So I think it's the consistency that makes it attractive, that you don't have to fuss about it. Well, is it this or is it that? They're all the same.
Can I, sorry.
Kate first, she was.
The one thing I just want to point out, I think the way this, it's because we had always talked about the longest somebody could sort of be in that holdover was like 11 months. I think it's actually longer, because if somebody was in a zone seat, moved to a different zone the Monday after the election, they would hold on all the way to the following November.
Yeah, it could be
right?
13
So it
months.
it could be a pretty significant amount of time,
Yeah.
which is fine. I just,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
The chances of
Yeah,
that
no,
happening.
It's
we
unlikely
understand-
to happen.
We
Right.
understand that's a possibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
But a probability. I doubt
Unlikely.
it.
And doesn't it feel like it would ever be a problem?
Right.
To have them in there longer than short. I mean,
Right.
if they were voted in, they were voted in for a reason.
Yeah, you haven't yanked the rug out from under.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
Lyndon.
for letting me vent that out.
I wanted to ask a clarifying question. So, section 5 seems to be about residency, your domicile, what ward or voting zone you live in. It doesn't, Jim, am I right, say anything about a board member resigning, which is covered already by a school board policy. There's nothing in the charter that addresses and presents a potential conflict with the school board policy about somebody resigning and the school board president nominating. That's not covered. 5 is just about whether you move within the city, right?
Yeah, no.
Well, or other vacancy.
Yeah.
So that this is, in fact, Lyndon, that it covers or other vacancy. So if you look up
Or
at the top,
otherwise vacates.
or otherwise vacate, so if you vacate the office, this proposed language provides the rule system that the school board must follow. If the school board currently has a policy that is inconsistent, like let's say the school board says, if someone, leaves the district, and I don't know what, they could continue to serve for another 2 years. That policy would be superseded if the voters approve this.
Can I read Lyndon the sentence? I mean, it
Yes.
says, Lyndon, that whenever a district or school voting zone board member ceases to maintain a domicile in the district or otherwise vacates such office, the board shall declare the office of such person vacant and shall appoint a qualified person to serve for the remainder of the calendar year when the voters of the district or the school voting district shall elect a replacement to serve for the balance of the unexpired term beginning in January.
So the board policy simply says that the board president will nominate and the board will vote on that nomination. So it's a little bit more strict than this, but I don't think this.
I don't think it's
precludes that.
inconsistent, no.
It doesn't negate.
No,
this just doesn't dictate the process
Yeah.
for how you appoint
Pick.
your new person.
I just
That's
wanted
up to
ask.
policy.
That's not superseded.
Yeah.
I don't think it's inconsistent.
No, if your policy said if someone resigns, the president picks the replacement for a year. That would be inconsistent, because it's not the president, it's the full board that has to pick the replacement for the year. That's all. So this doesn't dictate the process for soliciting people to apply for a vacant position, how the board sort of selects its candidate, how they vote for the candidate. Like, all of that's up to the board, up to board policy. This just says when the office is vacated, the board appoints, and that person holds that position until for the rest of the year, until a new person is elected, and then that new person takes office in January.
Well, I think we did that one, but that was the whole point of tonight, seriously. That if there were any remaining questions or confusions, or somebody wanted to play it out in order to say, yeah, I'm on board, that's the whole point of tonight. And that's why I'm going to applaud when we adjourn, because we will have really achieved something.
Okay, so
Thank
the
you.
last thing I'll point out, thank you, Betty. The last thing I'll point out is that we've separated the reporting requirements into a different paragraph. I think there's been enough of a consensus that we want to make those things distinct, just in case one is more supported than the other. There really is not any other, that covers all of the things that we went through and discussed and modified. Just to point out, Betty, that on page 6 of Appendix C is the language that we have not changed since last time, but that is the language we have approved in terms of the local amendment and revision process.
Is that 18?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm there.
18, and it goes on to page 7. Do you want to go talk about that again, or we've
Well,
talked?
I will confess to being old and to not remembering what I had for breakfast. But I wanted to be sure that I had it correct in my mind, that a 7 out of 9 vote will allow the school board to put an amendment directly on the ballot. Is that correct?
Yes, following
Okay.
the process in RSA 49. So 49B5
Yep,
allows that.
okay. And then,
But it has a different voting, it actually doesn't say what the vote is. So this would
We
say,
assign
we
it.
are saying 7 out of 9.
right, and then on the 6 out of 9, that is a sufficient number of school board members to agree to initiate the reforming of a new charter commission,
Yes,
right? And that mirrors what the petition process can do.
yes. And it's really, we said 6 out of 9 because it's easier to follow than saying a 3/5 majority when you have a 9-member board, right? It's just easier to keep that in mind. And there's a less of a vote required to create a charter commission than to directly put something before the voters, because you're sort of handing it over to another group, and so it's a slightly lesser
Well,
number.
I remember making the night that we discussed that a 7 out of 9 vote is not uncommon in Concord School Board, that the final budget, this passage in October, early November, is a 7 vote, and it usually starts as a majority vote on a preliminary passage of the budget. And I had that one drilled into me the first year that I was on school board and knew it all the time. So a 7 vote is not unusual. And it also has a very high level of importance added to it. So yes, thank you very much.
Can I make one, this is a nitpicky suggestion? We go back and forth between writing out numbers in those paragraphs and then having the numerals. And it just, when I try to look for something quickly, I'm like, where's the 7? Because we wrote out 7, but we have the number 6. Just one or the other.
Yep.
Or do we want to do that? That's not nitpicky. That's a good point. Yeah, we try to be consistent. It's most important from my point of view that we get it right really with the charter. The preliminary report, it's not going to, the charter needs to be right. So, that's not going to hold us up from approving and signing it,
No.
because I'll
Right.
just
No.
clean that
You can
up,
clean
and
it up 'cause it's not
that'll
the
be added
signature
as a
page.
cleaned up appendix.
Yeah.
And I can go back through one more time, and if there's any other places where I've put the number, I always prefer to write it out. I think that's really the standard.
I think under 10.
Yeah, under 10. And
Right.
and then you can do the parenthetical with the number
No.
after, which Bill hates.
I hate that.
That's redundant.
That's redundant.
And a Latin word, just
Yes.
throw one in.
She
Roman
said
numeral.
repetition brings
Yes.
emphasis, actually.
Onward, James.
Can we check the minutes?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Oh. I thought you were trying to,
No, so we'll make that change. We're having too much fun. We need to stop.
Yep.
no, you know, work can be also fun, and so keep going.
The second one, just to keep going through and refresh everybody's memory, that a written petition of at least 20%, of at least the lesser of 20% of the voters casting ballots in the last regular school district election, or 2,000 voters, but in no case fewer than 1,000 voters shall be required either to petition for a charter amendment or to propose the establishment of a charter commission for the purpose of considering a new charter, charter revision, or charter amendment. Okay? So that cleans that up. And then the third is now the vote of the voters. When one of those changes is presented, is always going to be a 3/5, 60% majority vote, regardless of whether it's a charter, a new charter, charter revision, or charter amendment. Okay? So that hasn't changed, but we're just putting it back out there in the record. So that's really it. And Appendix D is just this version cleaned up.
Yep.
So when we clean up the spelling out of 6 and any other things we find in there, we will also do a new cleaned up or unmarked version.
And the major reason this is so much shorter is that we've taken out all the language that had to do with 49B as it existed before.
Yeah.
And we've made reference to the current 49B, whatever year it is.
Yes.
Even if it's the year 2092.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so a citizen who's wondering about the process for changing the charter will be able to look at that language in this proposed charter amendment, in the charter document. It says specifically that this is going to be changed in accordance with RSA 49B. So they're going to need 49B, but that exists. That's a public statute, with only 3 differences that is listed in the charter. So the fact is, the whole process is no longer laid out in the charter, but that doesn't remove from the citizens what the process is. The process is in state statute, which is referred to. Great, thank you.
I actually think it makes it much more clear.
Yeah, much
Because you
clearer.
don't have potentially conflicting statute and charter language, wondering which one applies, which one's outdated. Now it's going to be sort of, it'll evolve as the charter law changes.
Yep, thanks.
So the next step is Bill's prepared some kind of a, motion in anticipation of this moment, and we have.
Well, we'll have a public.
Yeah, well, the public.
Here input, a discussion among the members, but I've got a motion that I can offer, or anyone else can offer.
Yep.
And then we would consider that motion to approve the preliminary report, basically.
Yeah, so process-wise, and if it's approved tonight, you guys can all sign, and we'll start preparing to send it over to the clerk and send it over to the state, and I'll write my fairly succinct legal opinion, and that'll accompany the document when it is sent up to the state. And then we'll be in the process of having conversations. I think we'll probably continue to just have an open dialogue with the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State's office. I assume we'll reach back out to them and keep the ball rolling. They have 45 days to respond. I think we're going to want to know well in advance of that deadline what their thoughts are, and we'll want to be having a lot of sort of maybe another conversation, another meeting or two.
Okay.
I'll reach out to them with Bill and let them know that we're submitting it.
A little early. Then let me tell you what the revised agenda is. We'll approve the minutes of our last meeting, and then I will open the public hearing. The first part of the public hearing will be for public input. And Jim, if you could stay around while that occurs, that would be helpful in case there's a question in public input that we need your help with. And the person, we'll let you vacate that chair. You've warmed it up for the next person.
Cozy now.
Yeah, and so, with that, I would look to have folks examine the minutes of the last meeting, which you've had for a little while. And my question is, have you found any errors, omissions, any things that you feel should be changed? These, I think, were rather difficult minutes to put together, and whoever did it did a good job. But in the meantime, I'll ask you, is there anyone who would like to point out anything in the existing minutes as you have them in your hand? Then I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Catherine. And a second from Nancy Kane. Those in favor of approving the minutes from the April 5th meeting will say aye, please.
Aye.
Are there any nay votes? And let's see, no abstentions. And while I'm right there, I need to tell you that Clint called in and said that he couldn't be with us tonight because he wasn't feeling well and he didn't want to bring anything to us. And we knew that Bill was going to be out of state tonight. So that's why we have two empty chairs. But they're both very well and send their felicitations, and we'll see them, I hope, next week. With that said, I'm going to take and use the gavel again because somebody gave it to me. We are now going to open the public hearing as has been identified, and we look to public input, and would ask any of you who are here, there's a sign-up sheet, and if you would sign up and tell us your concern.
I already signed up.
You've already signed up? Well, come on up, Mr. Swiker. And before you even introduce yourself, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you find some answers to your questions in what we've just gone over?
Yes, I got some answers and some more questions, and
Okay.
I think it was very reasonable to have him go first.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Roy Schweiker, and since I now have this lovely thing I can speak from, if you would go to page 6 of the preliminary report. Now that all of you people have decided you like the wording of Amendment 3, I'd like to make one comment on that. And that is, you're talking about the next election, and I wonder if you want to say the next regularly scheduled election. And the reason I mention that is, specifically, the city council has special elections to fill city council seats. So therefore, if you said the next regularly scheduled election, instead of having a special election, that would clarify that you're doing things differently.
Thank you, duly noted.
Okay. And now we'll go to Amendment 4. And once again, I note something that it doesn't say what happens if the school board doesn't vote a stipend. Does that mean they get nothing? So maybe you should add a sentence that if the school board does not vote for a stipend, it stays the same as the previous year. And the other thing is that essentially you're voting for your own pay for the out years, which is, you know, a little bit different. And I note that the school board has, gosh knows how many different steps for teachers, 100, 200, 500. The teachers can be on, they're doing the same job and they get different amounts. So I'm wondering if maybe what you need to say here is that your stipend does not increase until your next election. And that means there'll be essentially 3 different amounts being paid to school board members, assuming that it's changed every year, because you'll have to wait 3 years to get your raise, because that's when you're voted next, maybe. And I mentioned that, and the other thing being that I'm not quite sure why you say you can only vote every other year, even numbered years. Why can't you change the stipend every year? So I'd like to suggest that first off, you say that it stays the same if the school board doesn't vote on it, that you have the opportunity to vote every year, but your particular salary doesn't change until you're reelected as compared to the next election. All right?
Thank you.
Now we get to number 5, which, once again, I said the same thing the very first meeting. I feel like we've been through far too much legalese on this one. I think you need to say the board will determine how to have a district clerk and a district treasurer. So they can appoint them, they can elect them, they can have the superintendent nominate them and vote to approve it like they do with the staff and so forth. I don't see why you have to specify that the board has to appoint them. And I notice we have a discrepancy here in what it says in the thing and what it says here, and that there used to be a district clerk, deputy district clerk mentioned, and I wasn't sure where that came from. I mean, somebody said, well, it'd be nice to have a deputy in case the clerk is gone. Well, that may be true of a lot of jobs, but unless there is some statute that says what the deputy clerk is authorized to do or not do, I don't see why you should mention the deputy clerk in the charter, since the amendment, once again, since I don't see the exact amendment, I can't comment, says you can appoint such other officials as necessary. I would say the deputy clerk is one of these such other officials and doesn't have to be mentioned specifically unless they have a responsibility in state statute.
In response to that, I believe that the suggestion for a deputy clerk came from the just retired clerk, because there are times when if the clerk were out of town or unexpectedly out of town and we needed a signature, it would help to have the backup of a deputy clerk. And responding to your, I'm not sure why we would make it more complicated than simply say, the amendment is to require the school board to appoint a school district clerk and school district treasurer. That's in line with what happens in other organizational formats that are like ours. Other organizations elect their own administrative people, and so that's why that's as simple as it is, not convoluted into with this and this and this. I thought it was pretty simple and pretty clear, but your question is duly noted.
Okay, I wish to respond to that. First off, I was here when Mr. Phillips discussed that, so I understand all about it. I'm merely saying that since the deputy clerk apparently is never authorized to do anything, such as act in the absence of the clerk, there's no particular reason to put in the charter that you're going to appoint a deputy clerk. And if the school board can determine what the deputy clerk is allowed to do, then they can also determine whether to have a deputy clerk or not. So the office of deputy clerk does not need to be listed in the charter.
Duly noted. That's why we asked Jim to stay.
And the second thing is that I understand that some highly paid people have been discussing what the state will or will not allow you to do in terms of selecting the clerk and the treasurer. And that's why I say the simplest thing to do is just say the board will determine how they're appointed or how they're selected. And therefore, if the Attorney General decides after the charter is voted in that the board cannot appoint them, then the board can change it to whatever the Attorney General likes. You won't have to mess with charter amendments. So I still say the simple thing is say the board will determine how they're selected rather than saying the board will appoint them.
Okay, and you do understand we have a preliminary report, an opinion on it, and then we have a final report. And so this is not the last hurrah. Somehow we can go into overtime if we need to.
Well, I understand that, but, the Attorney General may change, the statutes may change. I think, just allowing the board to determine where they come from. Of course, they were required to choose a method that the state will approve.
Could you pull the microphone up a little bit closer to you?
I mean, the board will have to determine a method the state will approve. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the point is, if the state comes up with some different thing, then you don't have to go back and amend the charter again. The board can just vote to do whatever the state told them to do. So that's why I say instead of saying the board will appoint them, say the board will determine how they're selected.
I understand what you're saying, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Okay.
Okay, anything else you'd like to know for us?
On Amendment 6, of course. And that is, as near as I can tell from reading the new clean version, you have now eliminated from the charter the necessary vote to to approve a new charter commission. That doesn't seem to be in there in the new wording. So I don't know if it's 50%, 60%, 75%, 1%. I think that, that's a, typographical thing that someone needs to figure out what percent vote the voters have to vote for a new charter commission and put it in the document.
So if
Go
I
ahead.
could, Roy, that, by referring to RSA 49B, that vote and that process is listed in that state statute. So you're right, it's no longer in this charter document, but what the charter document does is point you to the language of 49B, and Jim can correct me if this is wrong, and then, with only the three changes that are listed in our charter, you apply the rules of 49B. So in order for a citizen, it's not a typo, it's a deletion of anything that was inconsistent in the charter from the statute.
Okay, but I noticed that for some reason you specify the vote to approve a charter amendment or revision. Are those not in 49B?
There are votes in 49B, but those three particular changes that you see in here are the changes that this commission felt should apply for the Concord School District Charter compared to the statute. So we've accepted the statute in all other respects, save for those three listed items.
Well, I'm surprised that you don't consider the vote to approve a new charter commission to be as important to specify as the vote to approve charter amendments. If you have one in the new charter, why don't you have the other one also?
It's in the statute.
I mean, that seems very peculiar. And, somewhere previously you said something about 49B, but once again, to make it easy for those of us who may not have been to law school, maybe you should put in here specifically that the percentage vote to vote for a new charter commission is as specified in 49B.
I appreciate the point. I think we've discussed this, and one of the problems we got into from the last charter commission was we wrote a bunch of stuff into the charter, and then the legislature changed the law. And so we had to come back again at this charter and consider making new changes that would match the statute. And I think the judgment of this group, based on the prior discussions, was what we should do is refer to the statute with the exception of those specific differences that are important to this city.
And, the bigger thing that, once again, I think is missing, and maybe you can explain to me why it isn't, is it says nothing about how many members will be on the charter commission or how they're selected. And once again, in the past, the charter commission has been selected to mirror the school board. Is that what it says in the 49B, or do they say something different about how many members are on the charter commission and where they're selected?
Let our counsel, but I think it says the exact same, 9 and 49B.
Yeah,
But does it say they're elected by zone?
No, it does not.
Do you think that maybe we should do the same thing as we do for the school board and elect them by zone and specify it in the charter?
now wait a minute, we were elected by zone to
That-
this point.
Under the old charter.
But-
But he deleted that whole section.
We were elected by zone the first time.
But he just deleted all of that.
We now, for the charter commission vote,
Okay,
it would refer to the statute for the candidacy.
And once again, you're the charter commission. You can decide what you want to do, but I think it should say in here that the charter commission should mirror the school board and be elected by zone. And if that's illegal, well, you have an attorney who can tell us that, but apparently it's worked in the past.
Thank you for
Duly
that.
noted.
Thank you for that.
Okay, well, I'll let you ask him how much of the stuff I said is relevant, and thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, I'm glad that you could come tonight. I'm glad that you could have this copy, because you could go through it with your fine-tooth comb and give us your ideas, and we really appreciate it. And we missed you some of the meetings.
You know, unlike certain other people, I sometimes go out of town and so forth.
We thank you for that input, the whole process. We
Thank you very much.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
And I'll still give you a ride home if you're a good boy.
I happen to walk back up and get my car. Not really a good thing.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? We didn't blow you away on anything. You've been properly prepared, or, well, I know that you see minutes, and you have attended, so,
I'll watch.
yeah, no, but it's really nice to see you here, and I know you've had a very busy day and evening, and you're probably anxious to get home at some point.
Or the evening for the
But this was, the first goal was to get to here tonight. And if there's no more public input, I will invite Jim back again and ask him what's the best way to us to proceed now that I put all this onus on us about how well we're doing.
Do you want me to respond to some of the questions? There was a sense that you maybe wanted me to do that.
Well, only if you think that they run so contrary to what we've done that they would require some discussion, but I think we've covered a lot of this.
Yeah, I think I'll point out that the issue of if there's a new charter commission, if it's elected per 49B, it's all at large.
Yes.
So
Okay.
that is a difference. It's not going to be elected by zone like this committee. So that's something that could be changed in the next round. I mean, you can make that change in the future. You can make that change now. I think it's a little kind of at the midnight hour to
Yeah,
Well, let me just say, nothing's at the midnight hour for this commission. It clearly, 49B says 9 members. And it is at large, because it's from the municipality. And I don't remember us on this charter commission talking about, so what happens if either the school board or a voter's petition puts a question to the voters that says, shall you elect a charter commission? And voters say yes, right? Then what we would do is look to the statute, and that would mean 9 spots would be open from the district. And it would not be broken down into smaller zones for the charter commission. That would be from the whole municipality, in this case, local. I don't remember us discussing that directly. And so therefore, it's not too late to and I know we're working hard and everything, but to open it to the commission and invite everybody to ask questions about that.
So I think you know where I'm going to fall on this. I feel very strongly about district voting and inviting more. So I would feel strongly that I would like that laid out, that it should mirror how we are electing the school board. It doesn't have to be for the preliminary report. It could go into the final report, but I do feel quite strongly about that. And I'm glad that Roy brought it up to us, because
Okay, yeah.
that was an oversight.
thank you.
My two
There's
cents.
someone else who
Yeah,
hasn't.
I think that's an excellent point that Roy made, and
Mr. Schweigel.
Mr. Schweiger, sorry. But I concur. It should be interesting. I think we should look at it at some point.
Nancy.
Bill or Jim, if the statute says 9, can a municipality say, obviously, we made up of 9 people. We would like to do this by school voting zone. Jim, can a district say that?
Yay. These are not easy questions to answer. Oh, well, you did it. So the current charter says that the Charter Commission is elected in accordance with Section 20 of the charter. So Section 20 of the charter is the part that says, this is how you elect officials. So the question I have is, under the new charter, what does it say about election? And can we just say, is there any argument then that any elected official in Concord, including Charter Commission members elected by the process in Section 2? That's what I want to look at. That's what I was just trying to do. So in other words, we already have our own process in here for anybody who's elected. Therefore, that applies to school board members or the election of Charter Commission members. And I want to look at it.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that now.
Yeah, so we
But does
maybe-
that go in the preliminary report, or is that as a change?
So the
Or
way,
is that just in the,
how we could execute this is the preliminary report in that Appendix C lists 3 places where we've determined we should differ from 49B.
right,
The legal question that Jim is pondering is whether we would have the ability to add a number 4 that would say that when a charter commission is called, that the 9 members shall, which is in the statute, shall be elected
The way
in
the
the
school
same
board is-
manner
yeah,
as a school board.
yeah.
I think there are 2 pathways. One is to proceed with this form of preliminary report, noting that the final report is the bottom line, and that there would be a process that would come where we would go to the state officials and we would present to them, look, we want to, one idea that's going in front is the appointed treasurer and appointed clerk. We still don't have a final answer from the state officials
Yeah.
yet. It could be that our final report is going to just wipe that out, as Betty said, in response to what Mr. Schweiker indicated. And, we just have to change that and go back to an elected thing. We could then change it there. Or we could have a motion tonight that says, move to adopt the preliminary report as drafted with 2 things. One, changing the number, spelling, and other typographical errors that might be found, authorizing the attorney to do that. And 2, to include the language as a new item 4 in the final preliminary report. And that would be an appendix. We could still sign the vote to approve that motion tonight and sign the preliminary report signature page tonight and have the attorney look at it and come back to us. I guess those are the 2 paths I think we could go down. Yes?
If I were one of the big 3, Attorney General, Secretary of State, and whatever the third one
Department
is,
of Revenue.
DRA, yep.
I would want to have a heads up on this proposal of voting way before the final report, when we would mention it
Yeah.
as an alternative to doing it tonight. I think it's too big a deal for them not to know about it
Ahead of
in the
time.
preliminary report.
Well, what if you,
And I don't know that
Go
for
ahead.
sure.
what if you put it in the final report and it were denied, then nothing, you just lose the battle. And
right.
Yeah, you mean put it into the preliminary
the
report?
preliminary, right, and if it's denied, or the opinion is, we don't want it, then we would have no choice. It would be determined for us. And some of these things maybe anyway, aren't they, open to their
Yeah.
opinions, their view. I
Sure,
mean,
but
that's
I
why
think-
it goes there.
But I think as a commission, we owe it to the public to let them know how we think things ought to operate.
Okay, oh, yeah,
And if someone in the state says no,
then,
we've
yeah,
done our part.
it's like, yeah, hands up.
If we could just, around this table, just with a show of hands, Tracy's mentioned
Yeah.
she would feel strongly about following the school district zone type approach. If people who would like to see that, as well as Tracy, could you just show your hands quickly?
I will say that I generally have not been in favor of it. However, I think it's very disingenuous to say, oh, well, school board has to do it one way, and we're great, we're gonna do it another way.
All
I
right.
mean, I just think that, it sends a very bad message. And therefore, I would agree with something that I don't usually embrace.
So, obviously, there's a legal question here, whether we can do it.
Yeah.
But I think we already have a legal question in there. So I guess I would propose that how do you feel about this, having looked at it a little bit very quickly?
Straw
Can we
vote.
get away with that?
Which part? The process part or the legal part?
No, the legal view of what.
The legal part, we can make this process work, right? We could finagle stuff and we don't have to look at the clock because this is an important meeting. The question I have is, the statute's fairly explicit that it's 9 members elected at large.
Well, wait. Where are you reading? 49B4?
I think that's where I was looking. Yeah.
Charter Commission shall consist of 9 members,
Maybe.
all of whom shall be registered voters of the municipality and elected as hereinafter. Oh, members shall be elected in the same manner as the municipal, oh yeah. Members shall be elected in the same manner as the municipal officers, except that they shall be elected at large and without party designation. Whoa.
Well,
Yeah, so it's like,
pretty clear. That's pretty clear.
yeah, that's a hard one to argue.
I don't know that you do that.
Yeah.
It seems like they chose that terminology for a reason. I don't know the legislative history.
Well, because probably cities, let me just guess. Cities have wards,
Sure.
like Concord. And the legislature said, that's not how you're going to elect your charter commissions.
Which is weird. I mean, I think that's odd.
So, given that language so explicit, what's your, there's no path,
I mean, this is sort of why
right?
we're stuck with this model of trying to change the parts that are really important. And I think this is important, so I'm not saying it's not, but everything else, we're stuck with what they've put in 49B. I think if you put this in there, it's a dead duck. And we already have bigger
Bigger
Yeah,
issues.
right.
well,
Fish
this
to
is a
fry.
big one, but the language here is really explicit. It says, except that they shall be elected at large, so how can I argue we're gonna create our own not-at-large charter process? It's,
We're like little kids who wear signs, we're
Like,
special.
You could make the same argument. I'm looking at my friend and colleague Tracy, who I can't wait to play tennis with her husband again as the season starts. But for some reason, the same arguments that support ward voting
Right.
in cities has been overruled by a legislative decision, and I'm worried that makes this a tougher hurdle.
No, it's fair enough. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and that's pretty clear to me. Normally, legalese is not clear, and that is pretty damn clear.
so our
Even I got that one.
So look, our argument here for a lot of these, the higher thresholds we're creating here is that we're setting a higher threshold for voting, a higher threshold for the board to approve certain things, we're setting the number of votes you need to petition certain things. We can make the bar higher there. Here, I can't make that argument. I think it's pretty fairly preempted in the statute, so,
It's sort of in your face.
I could walk back my concern to the point where I'm satisfied that at least the voters would know how it's gonna work, and not necessarily how we're gonna make it work. But that it will work, it's just gonna be an at-large vote.
Yeah.
Yep.
it seems,
And they
yeah,
have that heads up that I was concerned about.
it seems to me like the legislature has sort of said, the issues that make ward voting important, the public policy behind it, don't exist for charter commissions, and I'm like, I don't understand that,
Go figure.
but they've preempted the field here, so I don't recommend.
Well, it was worth a discussion. I'm
That
glad
was a
we
good
explored
That was
it.
a really great point to
It
have.
was
Yep.
a great point that Mr. Schweiker raised, to force us to do
Well,
an
and
extra.
I think of something that we all learned as parents, and that is, you have to pick your issues. And sometimes an issue is better to just leave it alone than to, and run the risk of having more important issues, then sort of they're getting back at us, so to speak. I worry about how we will appear as a totality through this document. And, I don't want to challenge the state gods. Been there, done that.
I do, but only like a little, like, right, like we're having a good dialogue there.
Yeah, oh yeah, and I appreciate it, and you could see where the interests lie, but,
The one thing, Betty, if I could,
go ahead.
having the expression, unanimous expression of what, without a vote, what the will of this group would be, means there will be, there are going to be discussions about this. And I think it's safe to say to our lawyer, when you're in those discussions, and I may be with you, with some of these state folks, let's make sure if an opening appears on this issue, that we pursue it.
Yeah.
And without disadvantaging the rest of the report,
Right.
but not leave it there, and I think we can give that instruction to our counsel. And ask him to use your discretion as we go through this next review phase.
Yeah, because we still don't know what's behind the curtain.
Exactly right.
So we may find out it's a different thing, and then it may open the door to this, so.
Right.
Are we all in agreement with
Yeah.
that? Just a simple no, it'll be fine. Yes,
Can I just
Of course.
confirm that there's no issue with respect to the special elections? You're not electing school board members during
No.
city special, okay. I just want to make sure we didn't.
no, we've
No.
talked about that.
Okay,
And
I wasn't there
There's an
for that.
expense and, a lot of things, that-
No specials.
no special elections.
Okay,
And that brings us fully back around to some of the things we've already discussed. Well, I will ask around the table. Are there any unfinished business, last-minute questions, concerns? Do you have any for us to answer to you?
No.
No?
May I
Yeah.
make a motion?
Of course, I've been waiting for you to do that.
I would move that the Concord School District Charter Commission adopt the preliminary report that has been presented and discussed tonight, and the ideas of which have been before 2 public hearings, with authorization to the legal counsel to our commission to make a change for consistency purposes in the numbers, whether it's to spell out the numbers under 10, and to make any other minor typographical errors he might find. And finally, that the members of the commission individually execute the preliminary report signature page tonight, with allowing, when Bill, Glon, and Clint,
Right?
that they could also add their signatures to it before we submit the final report to the clerk, the preliminary report to the clerk for submission, just in case they would like to sign this report with us. So it's a long motion, but you get the point.
And I look for a second.
I'll second it.
There it is.
No, yeah.
Okay. Well, this is the reason why we came. You've heard the long motion, you've heard the second. All those in favor of the motion will say aye, please.
Aye.
Yeah, are there any nays? Oh, God, no. There are no abstentions. The motion is passed.
Congratulations, everybody.
Nice,
Yeah.
really good work,
big step.
everybody.
So we're
Good job.
51% of the way there?
51, yeah.
Well,
52. We could be 90%,
It
we could be
depends.
20%. I don't know yet.
yeah.
It's legal
That's the-
math.
And please, before you run home and kiss your kids goodnight before they go to bed.
They're asleep already.
Please understand that we absolutely are indebted to you for what you brought us last week and the exercise that we went through to make that early decision. And then the follow-up materials are absolutely beautiful, clear.
Look at
Yes,
that.
and-
Point to
well,
that guy.
Okay, you guys can do
No.
this
Point
if
to
you
Bill.
want.
I think Counselor O'Shaughnessy has done a great job for this commission.
Well, and while we're passing out kudos, I would say that we could not have existed without Jim, Bill, and Lyndon, because behind the scenes,
That's right.
she has done yeoman work
That's
for
right.
us. And oftentimes, at the very last minute, while I'm home having a heart attack, she's taking care of things. So we do have to thank all of these people for allowing us to get to this milestone. And our look ahead, we don't meet until May 10th. It'll be a public hearing that night. The report, the preliminary report will have been delivered to the three designated state officials. And then a number of meetings after that are greatly diminished. And so you can make your summer plans and have fun.
May I make one other, we move into a very important
May 10th.
phase now, because this is not like 10 years ago when the entire charter was up. This has 6 discrete amendments. It is our job to get this to the public. And I see our school board leadership here tonight, and we need help. These are good amendments. They address important gaps in our charter, but we need to be able to explain to the public why these amendments that are somewhat technical in nature, we've worked hard, are really important to the long-term functioning of our school district. I think that whatever we can do, working together, Lyndon helping with the school board, with Betty's going to make a presentation to the school board, I think we have to get this stuff out and available to the public as we discussed last time. This is really all court press to get the message out. And all of us really have an obligation as representatives of the commission to find ways to do that with our neighbors and stuff.
There are still jobs to be done. For example, the phraseology that will go on the ballot itself. And then isn't there a note of information that has to be
explanation.
very non-judgmental, clearly information. So there are still jobs to be handled. And don't worry, I know where you live. We'll find the things. What?
Thank you.
Did we do everything?
Just a quick announcement.
I'm sorry.
After you adjourn, if you could all come over here and sign one pen, okay?
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, delighted, my friend. Oh, I said the firefly as he backed into the fan. Okay, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Thank you. It's a great job.